The tunnel had been sealed for nearly 40 years. Concrete poured into the entrance. Steel reinforcements welded shut. No signs left behind except a warning marker and a faded record in an old geological archive. When researchers finally returned, the goal wasn't discovery. It was documentation, to confirm that nothing inside had changed since the closure. But within minutes of reopening the entrance, something felt wrong. On this channel, we investigate sealed underground locations where researchers discovered something unexpected. And this tunnel, buried beneath layers of rock and time, would become one of the strangest examples of how underground spaces refuse to remain frozen in the past. The site was originally constructed as a service passage during a mid-20th century mining operation. It connected ventilation shafts to deeper excavation zones that were later abandoned when the project became unstable. Minor collapses, increasing groundwater pressure, and unpredictable airflow made the tunnel unsafe. Eventually, it was sealed permanently. Or at least, that was the intention. Decades later, regional surveys detected subtle changes in underground air pressure near the sealed section. Nothing alarming, just inconsistent readings that didn't match historical data. Air appeared to be moving where no airflow should exist. A small research team was assigned to investigate. Their task was simple: reopen the outer seal, inspect structural stability, and install monitoring equipment. The first meters inside looked exactly as expected. Dust lay undisturbed. Rusted cables hung from the ceiling. The air was dry, still, and cold. But deeper inside, instruments began reporting small irregularities. Temperature readings fluctuated by several degrees between sections that should have been identical. Airflow sensors detected faint movement, not strong enough to feel, but consistent enough to register. At first, the team assumed geological causes. Underground spaces shift slowly over time. Rock settles, pressure changes, hidden cracks open and close. Yet the airflow patterns didn't match natural ventilation. The movement seemed directional, as if air was being displaced further inside the tunnel. Then came the sound. Not loud, not distinct. Just a faint, irregular noise picked up on recording equipment. Something between shifting gravel and distant scraping. The researchers paused their advance, checking for loose rock or structural instability. Nothing moved. The walls remained intact. Still, the sound repeated. The deeper they moved, the more the environment felt subtly altered. Dust patterns appeared uneven, disturbed in places where no recent human activity was recorded. Small fragments of debris had shifted away from the walls, forming narrow, clear paths along the floor. No footprints, no obvious explanation. Only absence, as if something had passed through without leaving recognizable marks. By the end of the first day, the team reached a section where the tunnel narrowed sharply. Historical maps showed no alternate exits beyond this point. The passage should have been completely isolated since the day it was sealed, yet airflow readings were strongest here. One researcher noted something unusual in the report. The air didn't feel stale. After decades of isolation, oxygen levels should have dropped significantly. Instead, the atmosphere felt stable, almost refreshed. Something inside the tunnel had changed the environment. As they prepared to leave for the day, motion sensors placed near the narrowing passage registered brief movement after the team had already begun exiting. No visual confirmation, no clear source, but enough to raise a new and unsettling possibility. Whatever had altered the tunnel's environment may not have been inactive, and it may have been there long after the entrance was sealed. The following day, the team returned with additional monitoring equipment. The goal shifted from structural inspection to environmental analysis. Something inside the tunnel was influencing airflow, temperature, and possibly movement. At first, the changes seemed minor. Dust accumulation along the floor showed irregular patterns, as if fine particles had been slowly displaced over years. In some areas, debris formed shallow ridges that suggested repeated disturbance rather than sudden collapse. Still, there were no clear tracks, no signs of large animals or recent entry. As researchers advanced further, they noticed the tunnel walls had changed subtly. Mineral deposits appeared fresher in certain sections, indicating prolonged moisture exposure. Small pockets of condensation formed near cracks that weren't present in older survey photos. This suggested something important. The tunnel environment was no longer static. Water was moving. Air was circulating. And where environmental stability exists underground, ecosystems can begin forming in isolation. The first major anomaly came from thermal imaging equipment. One section of the tunnel floor showed slightly elevated temperatures, only a few degrees higher than surrounding rock. Not enough to indicate machinery or geothermal activity, but unusual for an abandoned passage with no external heat source. Researchers initially suspected chemical reactions within damp rock layers, but the warmth appeared inconsistent, shifting slightly between readings taken hours apart, as if something within the environment was generating heat intermittently. Audio recordings added another layer of uncertainty. Sounds previously dismissed as falling debris now showed patterns, irregular but recurring at similar intervals. Movement without visibility. The team slowed their advance. Conversations became quieter, not out of fear, but caution. Underground environments amplify small risks. Limited exits, unstable surfaces, and unknown air quality make even minor surprises dangerous. Further inside, they encountered the first clear sign that long-term activity had occurred. Thin organic material lined portions of the wall. Not webbing, not plant growth, but a layered residue consistent with microbial colonies or fungal expansion. Laboratory samples later confirmed biological presence, though not from any unusual species. What surprised researchers was the scale. The colonies suggested decades of uninterrupted growth, supported by consistent moisture and airflow, conditions that shouldn't have existed in a sealed tunnel. The environment had effectively become self-sustaining. Then equipment interference began. Motion sensors triggered briefly without visible cause. Recording devices captured faint disturbances that couldn't be matched to falling debris or airflow shifts. At one point, a suspended cable moved slightly despite still air conditions. Individually, none of these events were alarming. Together, they suggested ongoing movement somewhere beyond visible range. The realization changed the tone of the expedition. If biological activity had persisted here for decades, the tunnel was no longer an abandoned structure. It was an active environment, one that had evolved without human presence. The narrow passage ahead remained unexplored. Beyond it, maps showed a collapsed section that should have fully blocked further access. Yet airflow readings indicated open space beyond the collapse. The team debated continuing. Scientifically, the discovery was valuable. But uncertainty underground carries cumulative risk. Unknown air composition, unstable surfaces, or hidden voids could turn a controlled survey into an emergency. When audio sensors again detected movement from beyond the collapse, louder this time, followed by falling dust, the decision was made. They would stop advancing. The tunnel had already revealed enough to raise serious safety concerns. For the first time since reopening the entrance, researchers began to consider that the tunnel might be better left undisturbed. Not because of what they feared was inside, but because they no longer understood how the environment functioned. And underground, uncertainty itself becomes the greatest hazard. In the weeks that followed, analysis shifted from exploration to explanation. Samples collected from the tunnel revealed no unknown species, no dangerous organisms, and no evidence of large animals living within the sealed space. Instead, researchers found something more subtle, and in many ways, more unsettling. The tunnel had slowly transformed into a closed ecosystem. Small fractures in surrounding rock had allowed minimal airflow over decades. Groundwater seepage introduced moisture, while stable underground temperatures created ideal conditions for microbial and fungal growth. These organisms, in turn, altered the chemical balance of the air, maintaining oxygen levels higher than expected. What initially appeared as signs of movement were likely the result of gradual environmental processes. Expanding mineral deposits, shifting sediment, and slow airflow changes can produce sounds and disturbances that resemble activity. In darkness and silence, even minor changes feel intentional. Thermal anomalies were eventually linked to biological processes. Large microbial colonies can generate small amounts of heat as they metabolize organic material. Over long periods, these changes become detectable by sensitive instruments. The tunnel had not remained empty. It had adapted. Scientists noted that underground ecosystems are often underestimated because they operate slowly. Years of change occur without observation. By the time humans return, the environment no longer resembles what was originally left behind. This also explained the disturbed dust patterns. Air moving through hidden fractures can gradually push fine particles into repeating formations, creating the illusion of pathways or repeated passage. Nothing inside the tunnel had been hunting or hiding, but something had been living there, on a microscopic scale, reshaping the environment piece by piece. Ultimately, authorities chose to reseal the deeper section of the tunnel, not out of fear, but preservation and safety. Opening isolated environments can destabilize delicate systems or introduce external contaminants. More importantly, the structural uncertainty beyond the collapse made further exploration unnecessary risk for limited scientific gain. The entrance was reinforced again, this time with monitoring equipment left in place to track long-term environmental changes from a distance. Today, the tunnel remains closed, not because it contains something dangerous, but because it demonstrated something easy to forget. Underground spaces are never truly frozen in time. Even in isolation, change continues. Air moves, water flows, life adapts quietly in darkness. And perhaps the most unsettling realization for the researchers wasn't that something had been living inside. It was how easily an abandoned place can become active again without anyone noticing. Because beneath the surface, sealed places rarely stay exactly as we left them. The most unsettling part wasn't what researchers found, but the realization that sealed places beneath the surface rarely stay truly empty.